This is the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast, episode 10. This weekend, April 5th and 6th, meet the Mix 98.5 Street Team at Waterville Valley.
You can speak good. You're very good. Oh, I want to be a voiceover artist because, I just love talking into microphones. Oh, don't you know?
Hello and welcome to this episode of the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast. My name is John Melly, and this is the podcast dedicated to teaching in-depth and advanced marketing strategies for people in the voiceover and audio production professions. My goal is to help you make more money by showing you ways to leverage your time, charge more for your talents, and allow you to spend more time doing the things you want to do in your life. Hey there, it's John. Welcome to this episode of the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast. How are you? Thanks for spending some time with me today. I do appreciate it. Before we dive in and I tell you who my guest is today, and we've got a great guest. This morning I moved the car around for Ann so she could head to work. You know, I parked behind her, so we swapped cars. And before I went in, it was so nice here today. I went out, I stood in this garden that had gotten overgrown with weeds, and I just started weeding. I just wanted to be outside this morning. And I didn't want to go inside and have to get in the car and drive into the studio. But I somehow managed to get here today and took care of business, and now I'm sitting here and sharing this with you. But this morning, I did that. I pulled a bunch of weeds out. It actually felt good. After I did that, I saw this beautiful cardinal fly into the backyard and must have been going after all the bugs that I stirred up from yanking all those weeds out. But when I pulled into the station today, I was really excited to see that the pair of hawks that hang out on the tower have actually returned. They left during the summer, but now they're back. I don't know where they go in the summertime. So that's very cool. I absolutely love hawks. I don't know why, but I've always been captivated by them. On another note, last Friday, have you ever had this experience? Maybe it's not this particular experience, but you get started on a project and then something distracts you, and before you know it, some period of time goes by and you go, oh gosh, I didn't get done what I wanted to. Well, last Friday, my hard drive ran out of space, and I spent the better part of 2 hours poking around it and deleting files and reorganizing things. And I'm looking at them saying, how did this get so messy? You know, I found I had multiple copies of stuff, and I really needed to clean all that stuff out. It needed to be done, but not then. But unfortunately, it did have to be done at that time because I needed the hard disk space. And this is a hard disk that I take in my briefcase with me back and forth between studios. Some people say, oh, you should use the cloud and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, okay, cloud's pretty cool. I use Evernote and things of that nature, but I want to have my stuff with me. And I back everything else up onto other hard disks. But one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is I was telling somebody about this, or I think I may have heard about this on another podcast. I can't recall. But I found this new time management app that I've been playing around with, and it's called 30/30. And what you do is you enter a task, and you label the task for whatever it is. So let's say checking email. And so the time defaults to 30 minutes. You can add time to that, or you could subtract time to it, so you can make it however long you want. But the cool thing is that when 30 minutes or whatever time you allocate to the task are up, it lets you know. It says, okay, bing, move on to the next task. So sometimes you can schedule a break after it. So if you work steadily for 30 minutes and then you take a 10-minute break and then you go back and work for another 30 minutes without any distractions, you get an awful lot accomplished. What's neat about this is if you add time to a task, then it adds time to all of your other tasks. So you can see if you want to stop work and spend time with the family, then you can see how adding 5 or 10 minutes to a particular task at other parts of the day will push out the time for every other task scheduled. And then you can make decisions about how much of that adding extra time, I'm not finished, I'll just add 10 more minutes to this task. When you see how it impacts all the other things that you want to get accomplished during the day, it helps you make a decision on how much of that you really want to do. It took me a little getting used to it. Some of it can be a little, I'll be honest with you, it can be a little cumbersome to get used to. One of the things that I don't like is if you plug in a task for, let's say, Monday, it automatically defaults to the fact that you're going to do the same task at the same time every other day during the week. And that can be a little, you have to clear them out and all that kind of stuff. I'm probably not using this correctly, but I found that to be a little clunky. But when I have plugged things into it, it really boosts my productivity. It's really a cool app. If you're interested in checking it out, this is not an affiliate link. I don't make anything for making this recommendation, but you can check it out at 3030. That's 3030.binaryhammer.com. 3030.binaryhammer.com. Like I said, not an affiliate link. I don't make anything for sending you there, but I thought it was a cool tool, so I'd pass it along to you. Before we dive in, a few thank yous to everybody. First of all, thank you for listening and inviting me into your world for about 45 minutes. We have, as of this recording, 3,905 downloads for all the podcast episodes for the Voice Over Marketing Podcast. And I've set up a Facebook group for the Voice Over Marketing Podcast. All you have to do is go to facebook.com and type in the search bar Voice Over Marketing Podcast. And we've got a nice group of people there and some fun stuff being posted up. And so I invite you to join the group. And actually, as I was sitting here typing that information in, just want to give a shout out to Andy Barnett. He says, hey, John, thanks for the connection. I've been listening to your Voice Over Marketing podcast and have enjoyed it. Well, Andy, thank you very much for joining the group. It's great that I went and checked this out. You're new in the group, and thank you very much for listening, which is a great segue because what I want to do is thank everybody who reached out to me at the VoiceOver Virtual Conference earlier this month. And first of all, I want to thank you for all your kind words for both the presentation and a bunch of you reached out to thank me for the podcast. It's really gratifying to hear from people who are listening to the podcast and letting me know that, you're enjoying this. When you create things like this, you put stuff out there and you don't know how it's being received. And the other thing is you don't know who's listening. I see the statistics. I see how many people are downloading the different episodes and when they're downloading them, but I don't know who's downloading them. So it's always great to get a name and a face with the folks who are listening. I really appreciate it when you do. The other thing I wanted to say is I want to give out a big shout out to Lisa Hayes. She had sent an email to John Florian from voiceoverextra.com, and John is the gentleman who spearheaded the development of the VoiceOver Virtual, and she wrote such a great note, and I want to share it with you, and this is to John Florian. Hi, John. I just wanted to update you on my day 2 experience in the VoiceOver Virtual. Again, I grabbed my spiral notebook and watched the videos. However, I paused the video of John Melly's How to Build a Six-Figure Voice Business presentation and joined my local Chamber of Commerce. I've been truly inspired in just 2 days and will continue to act on this inspiration with the knowledge I've gained. I've loaded my calendar for the next month with local events. I'm reassessing my action plan and aligning my marketing materials to specifically meet the needs of my neighbors. After years of searching for work on the internet, my eyes are open to the potential that lies in my own backyard. Looking forward to day 3. Thank you so much for this experience, Lisa Hayes. Now, John sent me this, and Lisa has connected with me on Twitter and I think Facebook, and we've exchanged some messages, and I got to tell you, I needed that message the day that I got it. I had some kind of tough news about some other things going on, and, I was kind of keyed up about that. And to get that message that something that you create speaks to people and has made a difference, I replied to John Florian and I said, it's exactly what I needed. And getting a message like that made all the time and effort that I put into creating that presentation worth it. And we all need to work to make money and everything like that. But I think for me, I want to do it the right way. And the right way is when you're adding value to people. And I said to John, that's payment enough. I don't need anything more than that. That just made my day. it just was wonderful. So, Lisa, thank you. I'm so glad that you enjoyed the presentation. I'm so glad you liked the podcast. But thank you for taking the time to tell me and to tell us that it was important to you and that it made a difference. I also want to thank Don McKinley, Rye Taylor, Tim Danko, Ron Menatria, and Martha Mellinger and Don Reese for reaching out and saying hello at VoiceOver Virtual. It was great chatting with you. And there were so many people. I can't recall all the names, and I apologize if I've missed anyone. But also want to really give an extra shout out to Martha Mellinger. Martha decided to join the VoiceOver Marketing Mastermind group, and that was something that I made available to folks who watched my presentation at the VoiceOver Virtual. I'm really excited to start working with her. She's told me a little bit about her business and what she wants to do. And if you're interested in working with a group of like-minded folks with the sole objective of everybody working together to come up with ideas and solutions to help grow your business, a mastermind group is something you really ought to check out. We still have openings for the VoiceOver Marketing Mastermind group. I'm really not going to push it too much here, but if you want more information on that opportunity, let us know. Send an email to mike@johnmelly.com. And like I said, there were other folks who reached out to say hello. Thank you for doing that. It's great to hear from you. The other thing is that last episode, in episode 9, I went into this little story about scratchy towels versus squishy towels. And I also told you that I have this new feature on the podcast where you can leave me a voice message directly through your computer. You don't need to use a phone. It's totally free. And if you go to voiceovermarketingpodcast.com, on the right-hand side of the screen, there's an orange button that says, send us a message. Well, Amanda Callahan went ahead and did that because she had some thoughts about scratchy towels versus squishy towels, and she used the new voice messaging system to share her thoughts with me. And here's what Amanda had to say.
Hi, John. This is Amanda Callahan. I'm a pre-new voiceover student. I'm still in the prepping stage. I listened to your podcast today about the scratchy versus soft towels, and I loved it. In a previous life, I was married to somebody that we had that same arrangement, that he liked scratchy and I liked soft towels. So this is how we dealt with it. In the summer, I hung our towels outside and they would dry naturally and they would be kind of stiff and a little bit scratchy. In the winter, I put them in the dryer, in the clothes dryer, and then they were soft. So we both got to enjoy our towels the way we like them at different times. I'm enjoying your VoiceOver podcast. I'll get back with you another time. Bye now.
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks for taking the time to send those thoughts. I really appreciate that. Who knew that voiceovers and scratchy towels went hand in hand? So if you have a question or a comment or anything you want to share with me, feel free to go over to voiceovermarketingpodcast.com. Over on the right-hand column, and click the orange button that says send us a message. It's totally free. You just use the microphone on your computer, enter your name and email address, and you record a 90-second message. Well, enough of this stuff. It's time to get down to the business at hand. My guest today is Rob Berkley, and during our conversation, I've known Rob for a number of years. I won't get into all of that because I talk about it at the beginning of my conversation with Rob. But we talk about creating plans, and we talk about making transitions. If you're in a full-time career and you want to move into voiceover and eventually leaving your job and moving into voiceover full-time, we talk about some things that you want to think about and some ways to go about achieving those objectives. And even if you are full-time voiceover, my conversation with Rob is applicable to you and me as well. Getting clear on what you want your voiceover business or any business to look like is key to achieving the goals that you want to accomplish. So let's go listen to what Rob has to say. Welcome back. As I mentioned in the earlier part of the program, my guest today is Rob Berkley, and Rob is an executive coach, consultant, and advisor to owners and leaders of fast-growing companies. He's the co-developer of Vision Day, and you've heard me talk about Vision Day in other episodes of the program where the show is sponsored by Vision Day. And Vision Day is the acclaimed strategic planning program that's helped hundreds of people identify their passion to live an extraordinary life. And I did one of these with Rob a couple of years ago anyway, and I started my drumming as a result of it. I've started my health regimen as a result of it and taken my business in a bunch of different directions. So I wanted to get Rob on the program. Let me tell you a little bit more about Rob's background before we dive in. Rob's a former corporate executive for companies like Bankers Trust, Simon & Schuster, and Pearson, and he's a board member of public and private companies. He's also the co-founder of the Entrepreneur to CEO Mastermind Group that advises the owners of successful entrepreneurial ventures. He's married to Debbie Phillips, the founder of Women on Fire, and together they live in Naples, Florida, and on Martha's Vineyard. And also he's put in his bio that he is a handsome and powerful man. And Rob, I could go on and on about your accomplishments, but you are a powerful and a handsome man. Welcome to the program.
John, thank you for that intro. I'm not quite sure I put that last part in there.
Did Debbie?
Yes.
Or did Wilbur?
I think Wilbur must have done it.
Wilbur is Rob's cat and sidekick in the office. I should let everybody know that I've known Rob for about 7 years now, and I can't believe it's been that long. But Rob and I were involved in a business group together, and he led the first mastermind group that I was a part of. And you've heard me talk about mastermind groups and the power of mastermind groups. And from that group, a lot of interesting things have happened in my business. And Rob has got a great way of helping people define what they want to do and take their passions to the next step. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the program today, Rob. But before we go into all of that, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your story and how you became an executive coach. How did you go from Simon & Schuster and Pearson and these other companies to doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, my pleasure. And John, I just want to tell you what a great pleasure and honor it is to be on this show. As a listener and having worked with you, it's great to be on this side of the mic.
Thank you.
I'm going to give you the extra detailed version. No, I'm going to give you the short version because I know there's a lot of stuff that we have to talk about today.
Okay.
In the late 80s, I had started a software company with another fellow. He was really quite brilliant. And we grew this firm very quickly, and it became very successful very fast. It was on Wall Street. And what happens in firms like that is very often the skills of the entrepreneur are not the skills of leadership. And I found myself really in over my head, and there wasn't really anybody else in the organization to do it either. So a friend of mine said, Rob, if you keep up like this, something bad is going to happen. You're working 14 hours a day, 15 hours a day. You've got a lot of employees. There's a lot of potential for trouble, and there's also a lot of opportunity that you shouldn't miss. And so I said, so, well, what do you suggest? He said, you need to call this guy up. This guy's an executive coach, and he can really help you. And he's absolutely terrific. And I said, well, what's an executive coach? And he said, I really can't tell you. And this before coaches were everywhere. And I really can't tell you how he does it, but just call him up. Bring him into the city. We were in New York. And so I called this guy up, and he came in, and I started telling him my story. And, it's funny, I tell this story many, many times since then. It was back in 1989. And I've told the story many times since then. And every time I tell this story, I go back to exactly the same place. I feel like I felt then, which was really, I was scared. I was frustrated. I didn't know what was going to happen. And so I started telling him my tale. And we were in this crazy place called Naturally Delicious, which was on Lower Broadway in Manhattan. It had these wild green Naugahyde seats and orange walls, so it was kind of like a weird movie scene. And I started telling him my story, and he looks at me and he goes, Rob, I hear you, and I just want to tell you that no matter how bad it feels, it's going to be okay, and you're not broken.
Mm.
And I don't know if you ever had a moment when, you're speaking with somebody and they really listen to you. And even better yet, it feels like they really hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it gives you relief and comfort.
Yep.
And you feel good.
You don't feel alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I felt understood in that moment. And I said, do you really think you can help me? He goes, yeah. He goes, it's going to be about 3 or 4 months of having to do things you're not used to, things that you may not be comfortable with, but, we can really make this happen for you. And I said, well, you know what? If that's the case, then I would like to work with you. And he goes, well, that would be a pleasure. He goes, there's 2 things you need to know. And this has held true ever since then. He goes, the first thing you need to know is, one is you don't know how to do what you need to do in order to make this thing work. You may know of it, but you don't know how. And I find this to be the case with a lot of us, and me included. There's so much information available now. We have information on everything, but the information isn't connected to wisdom. And without that wisdom and experience, the information is sometimes less than useful.
Leads to rabbit holes.
Exactly, or frustration, or big mistakes. So that's number one. Number 2, he said, you're not clear what this company can do for you, and what you want out of this company, and what this company can be. And I have to tell you, clarity has come back time and time again. Now, I've been doing this work as a coach and consultant since 1991, and I think fully 80% or more of all the people I speak with struggle with clarity. And so he said, you know what, you've got to be really clear. And, the most important part of the story was at that moment, when he said this, I was thinking to myself, what an amazing thing to be able to listen to somebody tell a story for 40 minutes, 30 minutes, and then be able to point them in the right direction. And it clicked for me, John. And you know what I said in my mind? I said, I want to be this guy. And rather than running this company, I want to be the guy that kind of comes in and helps people build extraordinary organizations, that helps people get inspired, that helps people get motivated, and helps people move forward in their lives and in their work. And that was really the start of the whole thing.
Yeah, I've had moments like that. It's one of the reasons why I'm in radio is, I heard someone that I know, my cousin was on the radio when I was a kid, and because I knew her, this became real for me. It was sort of like, that's possible. Somebody I know is doing that, so why can't I do it? And that began part of the journey, and everybody knows, a lot of folks know that story, but we don't want to go into that too much now. But
your story is a really good one, and it's a very inspiring story, but I understand you had a lot of things that we wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. As an executive coach, so you've been doing this now for, 12 years now?
1991 to now, what's that?
Oh, no, that's like 22 years.
Yeah.
So I can't do math.
You're close, you just dropped a 10.
Yeah, there you go. Wouldn't we all like to?
That would be fun.
But as an executive coach, you've worked with a lot of business owners. What are some of the common mistakes and behaviors and patterns that you see that hold people back from achieving their goals? You mentioned clarity. Is that one of them?
Yeah. I could go on for 2 days about this. Let me give people a couple of really, what I think are really important ideas to focus on. The first one is clarity. And, if you don't, it's an old joke, if you don't know where you're going, you're going to go somewhere else. And so the first thing that business owners need to know is, what are they trying to do? What makes their business special? How will they know it's successful? What do they really want to do? So clarity is number one. Number 2 is to really start small and test small. So a lot of people get all excited, they have an idea about something, and then they put everything they have into it. All their energy, all their funds, all their time. And it doesn't work. And then they have to recover. And so there's a concept now called lean startup.
Lean startup?
Lean startup.
Okay.
Yeah. And how do you, in the shortest amount of time for the least investment, test your idea?
Okay.
And so I would say that where people get stuck is by not really narrowing it down and starting small. So that's number 2. Number 3 is by not taking action fast enough. So people will wait wait, and they'll wait till they get it perfect. And this kind of ties into the lean startup and also ties into clarity. But the thing is, as soon as the idea is ready, and as soon as you kind of ascertain that what the smallest meaningful step can be, it's time to jump in and get moving. Don't work on your business cards. Don't print flyers. Get your idea out in the world as fast as possible. So take action. And so what happens is people just don't take action. And I hear this all the time. They're still perfecting the idea 6 and 12 months later rather than going right away. So those are three things that I see business owners doing very frequently that slows them down and really causes trouble.
Sure. Yeah, that's completely understandable. I want to jump back to clarity for a moment because that seems to be the lead off for everything. Have you ever worked with somebody who wants to make a change and you ask them, what do they want? And they say, I don't know. They think they know, but they don't.
Well, that's a really important question. One of the reasons Vision Day was developed was for the people who don't know where they want to go. Now, a lot of people do. They have an inkling of it, but it needs to be really clarified. So the one thing I know is that everybody has gifts, everybody has talents, everybody has dreams, and the big thing and the big question is how do you weave all that together in a way that makes a sustainable lifestyle? The other thing is, maybe if we have time later we can talk about transitions, but how do you move from one kind of a career or one part of your career to another part that more encompasses what is most important to you? And so where people often go wrong is they'll do work just for the income that it brings.
Yeah.
And that often ends up being a very empty experience.
Right.
And we need to, of course, make enough money to keep our homes together and to take care of our families and to, make sure that we have enough to go on vacation and recuperate. But once that's done, we need to make sure that what we're doing is something that's very close to our heart.
Oh, absolutely. I'll go back to my story. I was a political science major in college. I worked in political campaigns. I worked in the legislature. I worked as a lobbyist for the real estate industry. But radio always kept coming back to me. And I said, how can I do this? And then it was at one point in my life, it was like, if I don't jump now, it's not going to happen. And it wasn't full time. It was part time. And there was a moment where I said, you know what? I'll flip hamburgers if I have to take advantage of this opportunity because it's pretty much now or never. I don't think you're limited to just one of those moments in your life, but let's focus on the transition thing because I am fortunate to be doing voiceover full time, working at a radio station as the production director, but also with my own freelance business. But there are folks out there who have other careers that they're in and they are interested in voiceover. They've always thought it would be fun. They have a dream to do voiceovers. So what do you say to someone who may be in one career, but they are looking to make a change, or if they have a side business and they want that to replace their current income? What do you do with folks like that?
That's a really, really essential question here. So, the first thing I wanted to quickly talk about is, and you talked about all the things you did in your life, and those things are really important because that defines the boundaries of your experience. So if you hadn't been a lobbyist, there would be things you didn't know. If you hadn't been a political scientist, you would have missed some stuff. And all that comes together into the person you are today. So somebody once said, no experience is ever wasted.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe it may be your mother.
Yes. She's always said that to me.
Right. And you've told me that before, that she, you quoted her, but no experience is wasted. And so the one thing I always urge people to do when they want to make a transition is it's not impossible. It's very difficult to make a jump from one full-time career to another. You just can't stop the world, get off, learn what you need to do, and then start the world back up and go forward. It's really hard. So what you've got to do is you've got to build a platform. You've got to start moving incrementally towards what you want, and that means exploring and studying and testing things. Like we talked earlier about lean startups, small experiments that will prove what you do. And so a transition has to happen over many months. It can't just happen in one day. And every time I see those books that say, leap and the net will appear.
Yeah.
I always say, if you leap, then I will come with a squeegee and get you off the cement.
Yeah, okay.
And I've seen it so many times, but to be a little planful about it, and you can make an incredible transition. So it's, what's the smallest step I can take moving forward to get where I want to go? Okay, if I want to move from what I'm doing, or if I want to add voiceover in as a part-time profession, well, what's the smallest meaningful steps that people can take in order to really start moving towards their objective? And of course, we're back to clarity again. You've got to know where your destination is. Then you can map out the steps to get there and how to get there in incremental bites. And to the point where you've even built up a small book of business. And when you've got a book of business that lets you know that if you were to do it full time, you could replace your current income, then it's time to make the transition.
So we've talked a little bit about plans and small incremental steps. What are some of the key components of putting together a good plan? How do we map this out?
I think there are a bunch of components. One is, of course, timing. But two is to break it down into steps that are meaningful actions right away.
What do you mean by meaningful action?
Well, to be able to look at a plan, there's a difference. If the plan says set up studio, or the plan says the heading is set up studio, and underneath that it says buy microphone, and then buy shock mount, and then buy scissor mount, and then buy mixer, then it's much easier to move forward if people know at a detailed level what action steps to take. Does that make sense so far?
Sure, yeah.
The next thing is, of course, a budget. So what can I spend? What can I afford to spend on this? And a budget is both time and money. How much time do I realistically have? When you started drumming,
yeah,
the big question was, well, how much time can I really invest in my drumming each week?
Right.
And if it's not enough, then you've either got to juggle things around or the plan's not going to happen.
Right.
The next piece of a good plan is support. Who are my supporters? Who are my experts? And this is one of the reasons I love the work you're doing, where you're supporting so many people to build their businesses, and both with your marketing and this podcast. And support can come in many forms, but you provide an essential component of any plan. Where does my support come from? Well, if I want to get into the voiceover marketing, market my voiceover business, or if I want to build my voiceover business, John Melly gives me support. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Those three components are essential. The next thing after that are the processes. So what processes do we need rather than just equipment? What do we need to implement in our plan? So what's it like to take on a new customer or a new client? Actually, I think in the voiceover business I would call them clients, because it's a very personal and a relationship where there's a relationship of trust and caring. So not just a transaction.
That's actually a great little hidden writer-downer there. Language is important, so yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, no, thanks. And so what are the processes involved? What's the new client intake process? What's my billing process? And so a plan needs processes too. And, a plan can't be complete in the beginning, but it can at least point you in the right direction. And as you get closer and closer to the destination, you have to continually refine it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned 3 components of putting together a good plan, and one of them, I think wasn't the process one, but I think it was
resources, support, clarity.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about support.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of a leading question because I kind of know where I'm taking you on this thing. How do you work with people who have a dream, a vision, and they're working on a plan, but they may not have the support from the people that they need it from?
Well, it is a little bit of a leading question, but it's a really important question. And the answer to that question is something that even to this day, that I use myself. I always say, if there's somewhere where you want to go in your life, find someone who can help you get there.
Yeah.
Or find someone who's already done it, that knows how to teach other people how to do it. There's a difference between people that are at the top of the mountain and people that are at the top of the mountain that can communicate it to others. There's a real magic to it. And in my life, I've been doing this either for 12 or 22 years. No, I've been doing this for a long time. I still have coaches and mentors that I check in with regularly, because I don't want to say even I get stuck, but I get stuck.
Sure.
You all do. You can't see yourself. So the people listening to this, there's no reason that you have to be able to figure it out for yourself. I want for you and our listeners to be comfortable knowing that getting support is actually a sign of strength, because it's not what we're taught. We're taught to, gut it out, move forward, overcome all obstacles, charge that hill by ourselves.
Right.
But having a good coach, mentor, supporter, someone that's done it before, can cut the time down dramatically and even rescue you from possible disaster.
I guess what I want to kind of drill down on is what if someone's in an environment where they have people who don't support them? They may have a dream, but they have a loved one who's kind of doesn't share that dream, is maybe a little critical of it. I don't know how pervasive that is, but I know when people try and make change in their lives that they run into resistance and pitfalls. And it may come from the least likely place or the place you would least suspect it. But it does happen. How do you help people overcome resistance to change and other pitfalls?
The environmental factors are so powerful. And this is going to sound a little harsh, but if there are people in your life, now if it's your main partner, spouse, parents, of course, etc., you don't want to change your life in the way I'm going to suggest, but if you have friends that when you have a conversation with these friends and you don't leave feeling better about what you're doing or encouraged or supported, then maybe it's time to review that friendship.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, John, but I want to have people around me that lift me up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, to have parents are, all of our parents, even to this day, our parents have a voice in our head when we're grown up. Some of it supportive, some of it not. The one thing I know is that our parents, almost to a T, always want us to be successful.
Sure.
And they just may not understand. And so, depending on our age, we might just not tell them what we're up to.
Yeah, right. As much as fans are, my parents are, I still don't think they understand exactly what I do. They've seen the studio, they've seen the concept, but when I'm introduced to people that they know, it's always a little kind of like, this is John, and he's the one who does the voices.
Right.
And it's just and the people kind of look at you like, huh? But it's okay. They don't have to understand. But yeah, that's very true. Personal story is, I was just telling somebody about this the other day, is when I started the transition from working as a lobbyist and other part of my career and moving into radio. When folks want to do this, I say the first thing to do is show up. Put yourself in an environment where the opportunity will present itself to you. So I was showing up at radio stations, and I can remember it was like St. Patrick's Day, and I was there. I had just finished work, and then I had gone to the studio to work on some more stuff and catch up with things and coordinate with people on different projects. And I had buddies calling me up saying, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm at the radio station working on stuff." And they were like, "Oh, hang it up, man. Come on out and have a beer," and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to do what I'm doing here.
Yeah, that's really important. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. But there was still that pull that you get from people who matter in your life to some degree. But at some point, maybe we could talk about this just a little bit. When does it become that pull doesn't have the same kind of pull that it used to, and that what you're doing matters more?
Well, that's how you know you're onto the right thing.
Okay.
And when you're on to the right thing, which let's just, for argument's sake, call it your mission or your purpose. And I don't want to get too dramatic about that, but once you're on your thing, that opportunity to go hang around with your buddies isn't as exciting as it is going into the studio or writing your book or making your piece of art or building your business or getting a patent on your device. It sort of fades away. And, one other thing to think about is that great friends are friends that grow with us. And friends that aren't growing, I would always be curious. And, it comes down to what you want your life to be. But I would always want people around me that are learning and growing and thinking about what's next. How do they make their life richer and fuller?
That's great. Rob, this has been a lot of great information. I want to be mindful of the clock. But before we leave, folks listening to this are at different stages of their voiceover career. But everybody can always start anew with a plan, or maybe if they have a plan, there are components that they can put into their plan. Are there a couple of good actions people can take right now?
Yeah, I think first, and this is going to sound super simple, write down your goal. What kind of a voiceover? Let's just say that it's a voiceover business that we want to start. Well, hey, what's your voiceover business going to look like? Let's create a written description of that. It's going to, for example, it's going to look like one night a week I spend 5 hours doing voiceovers. I leave work at 3. I come in early, I leave work at 3, and I spend from 4 until 9 at night working on my voiceover business. I do all the work that has to be done. And it's bringing in X amount of dollars. And I've got these kind of clients. So that's where I would start first. Okay, now we know where the end point is. Where do we start? Well, do we have a studio? Yes, no. Do we know how to market? Yes, no. How is our ability to really voice a program or a product? What vocal skills do we need to develop? And to sit down and actually make a list of all the things you need to go from where you are to where you want to be, and then break it down and put timings against it. Mm-hmm. And, of course, we talked about budget, time budget, and money budget. And then support. Like, who can I get to support me so I can speed up this process?
Right. When they make that list, is there a risk of them becoming overwhelmed and freezing?
Yeah, there is. And so that's when, if you, for the people listening, if you feel overwhelmed and freezing, either make the list a little simpler, take a step back, your goal might be a little too big right now, or get support and have somebody that's gone down the path help you get there.
Excellent. That's great. Rob, I want to thank you very much for your time today. I know you've got an incredibly busy calendar and schedule, so this is some great information that you've shared with us. Do you have any resources you could recommend that people could look into? And if people want to learn more about Vision Day, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
VisionDay.com, VISIONDAY.com, has information on Vision Day. It speaks about the program. And if what we've said today and if what you see on that site is intriguing, then you can reach my office at 508-696-4949 and speak with my assistant. And for listeners of this podcast, what I always offer is that I will do a 1-hour introductory session with you to get to know you and get to learn about your work and what you'd like to do. So I would look forward to meeting you.
Oh, that's very generous of you.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, I can't schedule many of those a month.
Right.
I do them, and I take great pleasure in meeting new people and learning about what they're up to.
Excellent. Well, that's very generous of you, Rob. And again, I just want to thank you for your time and everything that you've been a great coach and mentor to me as well. And just want to take an opportunity to publicly thank you for that as well.
You are so very welcome, John. I really enjoy our work together.
All right. Well, be well.
And you, thank you for having me on the show.
Well, that's it for this episode of the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to it at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com so you'll get notices of new episodes, and please share it with your friends and colleagues in the voiceover world. Also, it would be a huge help if you'd like this podcast and rate it on iTunes to help keep it near the top of the list. Feel free to share your comments and questions about this episode and future topics you'd like discussed at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com. And if you'd like more information on one-on-one coaching with me and mastermind group opportunities where we focus on growing your business, feel free to drop me a line at my cyber assistant's email address at mike@johnmelly.com. Thanks for listening. Now go out there and share your voice with the world.